I followed my fiancé into a dark warehouse, expecting to find another woman. Instead, I found my own inheritance being sold to my worst enemy. Julian laughed and told them I was too stupid to read the fine print. He said I'd never notice the money was gone because I was just his quiet, lucky girl. He was wrong. While I ironed his shirts by day, I was deleting his legacy by night. He thought I was his safe harbor, but I was actually his judge and jury. I am not your victim, Julian. I am the strategist who built your empire and the auditor who just took it back. I didn't just leave him, I became his boss. Stay with me to see how I dismantled a billionaire's life, one keystroke at a time. The steak on my plate was worth more than the car I drove in college, but I couldn't taste a single bite. Across from me, Julian Thorne was more interested in his phone than our 3rd anniversary dinner. He looked every bit the billionaire CEO. His suit was custom-tailored, his hair perfectly styled, and his smile practiced for the cameras. "You're quiet tonight, Elena," Julian said, finally looking up. He didn't wait for an answer before sliding a credit card across the table. "Go buy yourself something sparkly tomorrow, a necklace or a new watch, something that shows people you're taken." "I don't need jewelry, Julian," I said softly, keeping my voice light. "I just wanted to spend the evening with you." Julian laughed, a sharp, condescending sound. He leaned in and patted my hand as if I were a child. "Sweetheart, you're a simple girl. That's why I love you. You wouldn't even know what to do with a bank account if I didn't manage it for you. Just focus on looking pretty for the gala next week." My phone remained silent in my lap, but his buzzed again. He checked the screen, and his expression shifted into something colder, more focused. He stood up abruptly, tossing his napkin onto the table. "Work. I have to handle a crisis at the office. Take the car service home. I'll be late." He didn't kiss me goodbye. He didn't even look back as he walked out of the restaurant. I sat there for exactly 60 seconds, counting the beats of my own heart. To everyone in this room, I was the lucky girl who had caught a shark. They didn't see the forensic auditor who could spot a missing cent in a billion-dollar ledger from 10 paces. They didn't see the woman who had quietly fixed Julian's miracle acquisitions for 3 years behind the scenes. I left the restaurant, but I didn't call the car service. I walked to the parking garage where my own nondescript silver sedan was parked. I stayed 3 cars behind Julian's black SUV as he drove away from the city center, heading for the industrial district. He didn't go to his office. He pulled into a secluded warehouse near the docks. I parked a block away and moved through the shadows. My heart wasn't pounding. It was steady, analytical. I found a side door and slipped inside, the smell of damp concrete and old oil filling my lungs. Up ahead, Julian was standing under a single humming light bulb. He wasn't alone. Standing with him was Marcus Reed's lead developer, and to my horror, my estranged stepbrother, Leo. "Is the paperwork ready?" Julian's voice echoed, stripped of his usual charm. "Signed and sealed," Leo said, holding up a folder. "Elena didn't even look at the protection clause in that prenup you gave her. She thought she was signing for wedding insurance. She has no idea she just collateralized her father's entire estate for your new loan." Julian let out a cold, triumphant laugh. "I told you she was too stupid to read the print. She thinks I'm her hero. By the time she realizes the money is gone, we'll be in the Caymans and Thorne Industries will be liquidated." I stood in the darkness, my back against the cold brick wall. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply closed my eyes and visualized every account number, every digital trail, and every hidden asset Julian Thorne owned. I had followed him tonight expecting to find another woman. Instead, I had found a thief. As I walked back to my car, the quiet, lucky girl died in that warehouse. I started my engine, a thin, cold smile touching my lips. Julian wanted to play a game with numbers, but he had forgotten one thing. Numbers were the only language I spoke fluently. I wasn't going to break up with him. I was going to erase him. The next morning, the sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse, mocking the darkness of what I had discovered. I stood in the kitchen, carefully brewing Julian's favorite Blue Mountain coffee. When he walked into the room, adjusting his silk tie, he didn't even look at me. He was too busy scrolling through a tablet, likely checking the stock prices he was about to manipulate. "The florist called about the centerpieces for the gala," I said, my voice soft and airy, the perfect imitation of the woman he thought I was. "I was thinking white lilies. What do you think, Julian?" He let out a short, dismissive grunt. "Whatever you want, Elena. Just make sure it looks expensive. I need the investors to see stability, not a budget wedding." "Of course," I replied, handing him his mug. "I want everything to be perfect for our big night." As he took a sip, he finally glanced at me, his eyes scanning my oversized cardigan and messy bun. "And for heaven's sake, buy a new dress, something that doesn't make you look like a librarian. I'm tired of people asking if I'm your assistant." I forced a shy, hurt smile. "I'll try to find something better." The moment the door clicked shut behind him, the smile vanished. I went to the guest bedroom, a room Julian never entered, and pulled a burner phone from a hidden compartment in the closet. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "Marcus Reed," a deep, gravelly voice answered. "I have the Thorne Industries internal ledger for the last 3 quarters, including the offshore accounts Julian thinks are invisible." There was a long silence on the other end. Marcus Reed was Julian's most aggressive rival, a man Julian feared because he couldn't buy him. "Who is this?" Marcus asked. "You can call me V. I'm looking for a consultancy role. I want to dismantle Thorne Industries from the inside, and I think you'd enjoy owning the wreckage." "What's your price?" "I don't want your money, Marcus. I already have Julian's. I want your infrastructure to make sure he can never build another empire again." By noon, I was in a small, sleek studio apartment I'd rented under a shell company. I shed the cardigans and the simple girl persona. I stepped into a tailored charcoal gray power suit and pulled my hair back into a sharp, tight ponytail. Looking in the mirror, I didn't see the lucky fiancé. I saw the ghost. I spent the next 6 hours at a bank of monitors, my fingers flying across the keys. I wasn't just looking at Julian's debt, I was moving it. I began leaking tiny, almost imperceptible errors into his main operating accounts, errors that would trigger a red flag in the bank's automated system. Just as I predicted, my personal phone buzzed at 5 p.m. It was Julian, his voice sounding frantic. "Elena, I'm going to be late again. The system is glitching and the auditors are asking questions. I have to call V." "Oh no, Julian," I said, leaning back in my chair and watching the red warning bars climb on my screen. "Is it serious?" "It's nothing you'd understand," he snapped. "Just have dinner without me, and don't stay up late." I hung up and turned back to the monitors. I reached out to Julian's system through an encrypted portal, acting as V, the anonymous auditor he had relied on for years. I sent him a brief, clinical message. "Errors detected. I can mask them for now, but it will cost you." I watched the transfer confirmed notification pop up a second later. Julian was paying me 5 figures to fix the very holes I was digging. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. Julian thought he was the one in control, but he was just a passenger in a car I was driving off a cliff. He had called me too stupid to read the fine print. He was about to find out that I hadn't just read it, I had written it. The smell of expensive leather and Julian's sharp cologne usually filled the penthouse, but lately it was replaced by the sour scent of his stress. He paced the living room, his phone pressed so hard against his ear that his knuckles were white. "I don't care what the bank says," Julian shouted into the receiver. "The funds were there yesterday. Find them." I sat on the sofa, calmly folding a stack of his silk shirts. I looked every bit the domestic, docile fiancé in my oversized beige sweater. I didn't look up, but my mind was recording the exact figures he was yelling about. Those funds weren't lost. They were currently sitting in a holding account I had created 3 hours ago. Julian hung up and turned his frustration on me. "Can't you do that somewhere else? The sound of the fabric is grating on my nerves." "I'm sorry, Julian," I said, my voice soft and apologetic. "I just wanted everything to be ready for the gala. I even found a lovely lace dress on sale." Julian let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "A sale dress at a Thorne Industries gala? You really are out of your depth, Elena. You're lucky I'm the one making the decisions, or we'd be living in a tent next year." He grabbed his jacket and slammed the door as he left. I waited until I heard the elevator chime before I dropped the shirt in my hands. The sweet girl mask fell away, leaving a face of cold, hard steel. An hour later, I was at my secret studio. The transformation was physical. I stepped out of the baggy beige sweater into a sharp, tailored navy suit that fit like armor. My reflection didn't show a victim, it showed a predator. I logged into the encrypted server. My screen was a sea of red. Julian's company was hemorrhaging money because I was opening the veins. Every fix I provided as V actually rerouted his liquid assets into a private trust. It was a masterpiece of financial engineering. My burner phone buzzed. It was Marcus Reed. "The board is getting restless, V. Julian's debt-to-equity ratio is hitting the breaking point. If we leak the insolvency now, the company collapses by Friday." "No," I said, my voice steady. "Not Friday. The gala is 3 days. I want him to feel the height of his success before I take the floor out from under him. Is the paperwork ready?" "Ready and waiting," Marcus replied. "I still don't understand how you got him to sign the transfer of power. He's arrogant, but he's not a complete fool." I looked at a copy of the wedding insurance documents I had Julian sign last week. Hidden within the 50 pages of boilerplate text was a clause that granted the spouse-elect full administrative control over the Thorne estate in the event of a debt-related audit. "He didn't read it, Marcus," I said, a thin smile touching my lips. "He was too busy telling me how I wouldn't understand the big words." I spent the rest of the night moving the last of the Thorne family's legacy. By the time the sun began to rise, Julian Thorne owned nothing but the suit on his back and a mountain of debt he didn't even know existed yet. When I returned to the penthouse, I found Julian passed out on the sofa, an empty bottle of scotch on the coffee table. He looked small, a far cry from the golden boy the world saw. I leaned over and gently tucked a blanket around him, whispering the words he loved to hear. "Don't worry, Julian. Everything is going exactly according to plan." He stirred in his sleep, mumbling about a merger. He had no idea that the clueless girl standing over him was about to become his new boss. The countdown to the gala had begun. The morning of the Thorne Gala arrived with a heavy, electric silence. Sunlight hit the diamond ring on my finger, casting tiny, fractured rainbows against the white marble of the vanity. To anyone else, it was a symbol of a fairy tale life. To me, it was a ticking clock. Julian stood behind me, his reflection in the mirror sharp and predatory. He wasn't looking at my face. He was adjusting the collar of the soft, pale pink dress he had bought for me. It's a bit modest, but it suits you. It makes you look innocent. That's the image we need tonight. Stability, purity, the perfect wife for the man who has everything. "I'll do my best to play the part, Julian," I said, my voice a practiced whisper. He gripped my shoulders, his fingers digging in just a little too hard. "You'd better. This merger is the only thing that matters. If you trip over your own feet or say something stupid to the press, so help me, Elena." He didn't finish the threat. He didn't have to. He let go and checked his watch. "I have to meet the board for a pre-gala briefing. The car will pick you up at 7. Don't be late." The moment the door slammed, I stood up. I didn't look at the pink dress. Instead, I went to the guest room and pulled out a garment bag hidden behind a row of winter coats. Inside was a midnight black tuxedo gown, sharp, architectural, and commanding. It didn't scream innocence. It screamed authority. I opened my laptop one last time. My fingers moved with clinical speed. I was no longer Elena, the simple fiancée. I was V. I sent a final encrypted file to Marcus Reed. It contained the digital kill switch, the exact sequence that would override the gala's presentation screens at 9 p.m. "Everything is in place," Marcus' voice crackled through the burner phone. "The creditors are already positioned in the ballroom. The moment the documents hit the screen, Julian's credit lines will freeze globally. Are you sure you want to be the one to do it, Elena? You could just walk away now with the money you've moved." I looked at the pink dress crumpled on the floor. I thought about the warehouse, the laughter, and the way Julian had signed away my father's legacy without a second thought. He didn't just steal money, Marcus. He tried to steal my future because he thought I wasn't smart enough to have one. I don't just want the money. I want him to see exactly who took it. By 6:45 p.m., I was ready. I didn't put on the pink dress. I didn't put on the delicate pearls he'd gifted me. I stepped into the black gown, the silk feeling like cool armor against my skin. I painted my lips a deep blood red and slicked my hair back into a mirror shine finish. As I walked toward the elevator, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. For 3 years, I had played a character. I had been the shadow in Julian's light. Tonight, the shadow was going to swallow him whole. The car service Julian sent was waiting downstairs. I stepped into the back seat, the driver not even looking back, assuming I was the same quiet girl he drove every day. I checked my phone. One new message from Julian: "Don't embarrass me tonight." I leaned back against the leather seat and watched the city lights blare past. "Oh, Julian," I whispered to the empty car, "I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm going to end you." The car pulled up to the red carpet of the Thorne Plaza. The flashes of 100 cameras exploded against the windows. It was time. The doors to the grand ballroom swung open, and the air in the room seemed to shift. I didn't scurry along the walls like I usually did. I walked straight down the center aisle, the heels of my boots clicking rhythmically against the polished marble. The room was a sea of black ties and silk gowns, but as I passed, heads turned. The quiet girl they all knew was gone. In her place was someone they didn't recognize, someone who looked like she owned the air they were breathing. Up on the stage, Julian was in his element. He stood behind a crystal podium, a glass of vintage champagne in one hand, the other gesturing toward the massive digital screen behind him. "Tonight isn't just about a merger," Julian's voice boomed through the speakers, full of practiced warmth. "It's about the future of Thorne Industries. It's about legacy, and I couldn't have done it without the support of my lovely fiancée, Elena." He looked into the crowd, searching for the soft pink dress he'd bought for me. When his eyes finally landed on me in the center of the room, his smile faltered. His grip on the champagne glass tightened. He didn't recognize the woman in the sharp black tuxedo gown, but he recognized the cold, steady gaze I leveled at him. I didn't stop. I kept walking until I reached the front row where Marcus Reed was sitting. He gave me a single, respectful nod. "Elena?" Julian's voice cracked slightly, though he tried to mask it with a laugh. You're late, and I see you chose a different outfit." "I chose a lot of things today, Julian," I said, my voice projecting clearly without the need for a microphone. Julian tried to ignore the tension. He turned back to the audience, his face flushing with a mix of anger and nerves. "Anyway, as I was saying, the merger is finalized. Let's look at the projected growth for the next fiscal year." He pressed a button on his remote. The screen didn't show growth charts. It didn't show the Thorne Industries logo. Instead, a massive high-definition scan of a legal document appeared. At the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Notice of Insolvency." A gasp rippled through the room. Julian spun around, his face turning a ghostly shade of white. "What is this? There's a mistake. Tech team, fix the feed." The screen flickered, but instead of vanishing, it zoomed in on the signature at the bottom of the document. It was Julian's signature, right next to the wedding insurance clause I had written. Then the screen changed again. It showed a map of offshore accounts, tracing the flow of Thorne's liquid assets directly into a private trust. The name on the trust wasn't Julian Thorne. It was Elena Vance. Julian turned to me, his eyes bulging. He stepped off the stage, marching toward me with his hand raised as if to grab my arm. Two security guards, men Julian thought worked for him, but whose payroll I had taken over that morning, stepped in his path. I walked up the stairs to the stage and took my place behind the podium. I didn't need notes. I had a photographic memory for the numbers, and the numbers were all on my side. Julian once told his friends I wouldn't know what to do with a bank account. I said into the microphone. My voice was calm, melodic, and terrifyingly cold. He was right. I didn't know what to do with his until I decided to empty it. Julian was shaking now, his golden boy image disintegrating before the city's most powerful people. "This is a lie. She's a librarian. She's nobody." "I am not your quiet fiancé, Julian," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "I am V. I am the auditor who has been holding your crumbling company together for 3 years because you were too busy playing king to notice the walls were rotting. And as of 5 minutes ago, based on the debt-related audit clause you signed, I am the majority shareholder and owner of Thorne Industries." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Julian looked around the room, searching for an ally, but all he saw were creditors and rivals realizing the predator had become the prey. "Security," I said quietly, "please escort Mr. Thorne from the building. He is no longer authorized to be on the premises." Julian screamed, a raw, desperate sound as the guards took his arms. He was dragged out of his own gala, leaving behind nothing but the echo of his ruin. An hour later, the chaos had settled. The press was outside, and Marcus Reed was handling the board members. I walked out onto the balcony of the estate, the home my father had built, the home Julian had tried to steal. The city lights twinkled below, indifferent to the rise and fall of empires. I leaned against the stone railing, feeling the cool night air on my face. Following Julian that night to the warehouse was the biggest regret of my life. I regretted seeing how ugly a human soul could be. I regretted the 3 years I spent dimming my own light to make his look brighter. But as I looked down at my hands, now free of the diamond ring he'd used to try and buy my silence, I knew it was also my greatest victory. I had lost a fiancé, but I had finally found myself, and for the first time in a long time, the numbers finally added up.